So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you to today's webinar, where we are looking at the behavior.
You have muted.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be starting shortly. In a minute, in 1 minute, we'll be starting. So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to start off now, and I want to welcome the chair of Zoology Department at JKUAT to say a few words, and then I can introduce the speakers of today's webinar. Dr. Gladys Onyambu, please, you're welcome to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Director Dr. John Kenyuru. My name is Dr. Gladys Onyambu from the Department of Zoology, Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I want to take this opportunity also to join Dr. Kenyuru to invite you to today's webinar. Wildlife conservation is a very central topic in this time. It provides a balance in many processes and stability in nature. And because of that, the main goal of wildlife conservation is to ensure the survival of the various animal species, especially those ones which are endangered, and also to provide education to the people to be able to live sustainably together with the existing species. At the Department of Zoology, we offer a whole program that deals with conservation at undergraduate level, at master's level, and even at PhD level. So I want to join the rest of the members, our guest speakers, in trying to perpetuate the goal of wildlife conservation as a university, as a department, as a university, and as a global community. Thank you so much and welcome everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gladys, for hosting us. So I want to introduce our two speakers. We'll start with Dr. Ogeto Mwebia, who is a senior research scientist and head of osteology section of the Zoology Department and the National Museums of Kenya. Dr. Mwebia has been studying carnivore prey bone and here remains to reconstruct their diet for the last 31 years. And his main focus is at understanding human-carnivore conflicts and enhancing carnivore conservation. He has analyzed bone and cat remains from over 50 hyena den sites around the country and is quite knowledgeable on the feeding and bone accumulating behavior of the two striped and spotted hyena species found in Kenya. He's a leading local bone identification and wildlife forensic expert and advisor to local and international students on matters related to carnivorous cats, or pellets, and modern zooarchaeological bone remains morphological analysis. And he's an author of several publications in this field. We also have Professor K.E. Holekamp, a distinguished university distinguished professor of integrative biology at Michigan University. Michigan State University. Professor Holekamp has been studying the behavioral ecology and conservation of spotted hyenas in the Masai Mara National Reserve continuously for over 34 years, together with her students, research assistants, and KWS scientists. She has published over 200 articles on hyenas in professional journals, and she is considered one of the world's foremost authorities on the biology of this species. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are very honored to have these two distinguished scientists talking to us about the hyena behavior, behavioral ecology, and conservation in Kenya. So, at this point, I want to welcome Dr. Ogeto to share his presentation for the next 20 minutes, which we will allow Professor K to make her presentation, and then we can open discussion after that. Members, feel free to post questions and queries on the chat function, and you sample the question or ask the questions at the end of their presentation. So, Dr. Ogeto, kindly, you can take it up with your presentation. Thank you. Dr. Ogeto?
Yes, I'm trying to share my screen. Yes, is now my screen visible?
Yeah, put it on slideshow.
Okay. All right. Yeah, as we have been told, Ogeto, and I work on bone identification. Today, I'm just going to share what I've done on trying to reconstruct hyena diet based on bone remains and scat analysis. So we need to know how the hyena feeds in order to be able to conserve it. So that's what I will focus on. And then later on, Professor K will talk about behavior. In the world, we have 3 living hyenas. 4 species of living hyenas. And one of them is a spotted hyena. We have striped hyena. We have brown hyena. And also we have the aardwolf. These hyenas are distributed differently in the world. For example, we have the spotted hyena is only found in Africa, and it's distributed from Southern Africa to West Africa, but is not in the Sahara. Then the striped hyena is widely distributed, found in Africa and also in Asia and Middle East. But in Africa, it's only found from Eastern Africa, and it goes up to North Africa and West Africa, but it's not found in South Africa. Then we have the brown hyena. This is only restricted to South Africa, but it is symbiotic with the brown, the spotted hyena. And also we have the aardwolf, which is also found in Southern Africa, and then it's only restricted in Eastern Africa, where it is in Kenya and parts of Ethiopia, northern Ethiopia. And then it goes to South Africa, where it is symbiotic with the brown hyena. In Kenya, we only have the three species. That is the spotted hyena, the striped hyena, and the aardwolf. Of these three species, it's only the two, that is the striped hyena and the spotted hyena, that feed on bones. And as I said, my main focus is only on bones accumulated by these two species of hyenas. And I'll focus only the two hyenas that eat bones. That is the striped and spotted hyena. We do identification of these, the remains, mainly using morphology, that is comparative anatomy. And we identify both hairs and bones that have been collected. For example, in this slide, what I'm showing is that sometimes in the middle here, we get a pile of bones, then we clean them. After cleaning them, we pick those things that we can identify. Then we use a comparative material that we have in our collections to identify them. And we do this through measurements and then comparison. We have a large comparative material in our collections that consists of all vertebrates, mostly from Kenya. And they consist of fish, birds, mammals, and reptiles. Identifying diet involves both collecting scat from wherever a carnivore then leaves, wherever a carnivore drops them. And then we have to identify which species dropped that. And then after we do that, then we go into the lab, clean them. These scats, mainly scat and pellets, have a lot of bones in them as well as hairs. So after we clean them, we go and do the comparison. And in this slide, I'm showing the various types of materials that we handle. We have leopard scat, we have owl berets, we have hyena scat, which is very distinct in this. This is the white stuff. And then we have a dropping from the Savo cat. Talking of the comparative material, we have, for example, the hairs. We have the hairs that we have prepared and taken photographs of them and have measured. Using these measurements, especially the medulla, the medulla size, we can use that to identify hairs from the scats. Once we get the scats, we clean them, we take photographs using a microscope, and then we have accumulated this kind of hairs. We have the comparative material with us, and we use this to identify the hairs that we have collected from scats. And this is an example of human hair. We have warthog hair, we have hyrax, as well as porcupine. Here I'm just giving an example of hair from a donkey. The photograph on the left shows a comparative material, that is a reference material of hair that we have in our photographs. And on the right is the hair that we identified from scat that was of a donkey. So if you look at the measurements, if it's clear with you, you can see the scale there, the measurements are similar. Then, given that background, I'm just going to present a short study that we conducted, where we tried to compare striped hyena diet and that of the spotted hyena. And we did this study in Samburu. In this study, we collected bones from dens of these two hyena species, and then compared them. It is well established that these two species accumulate a lot of hairs, a lot of bones in their dens, and these studies have been used to establish who collected bones in paleontological sites as well as archaeological sites, because in archaeological sites, especially where people were living in caves, we have bones that are intermingled, that are collected both by hyenas as well as people and the other carnivores that use dens. This method is relatively inexpensive, and while it is widely used in other places, it's it has not been used widely in Kenya, and that's why we are trying to popularize it and use it. The main questions that we ask when we are analyzing bones include to find out the differences and similarities of bones that have been accumulated by hyenas in order to help us differentiate which species was involved in the accumulation of the bones. In most cases, when we are analyzing bones, we don't have, probably the den might not be active, so we don't know exactly who accumulated them until we get the bones, analyze them, and try to find out the bite marks or the marks that have been put on by the hyenas when they were feeding in order to determine. That can be done when you measure the size of tooth mark and the areas that they focus on. Then from there, then we ask the question, what can the remains tell us about the ungulate dynamics in that area? That is, which species are represented? Do the bones represent what is in that area? That's one of the questions that we ask. And then another question that we ask, hyenas are mainly blamed for stock raiding, that's eating wild livestock. How much does that tell us from the bones? Do the bones tell us exactly that? They really mainly depend on livestock, or are they depending on other prey that is available in that area? Then the main objective of this study was to determine prey preferences of the two hyena species, compare livestock and wildlife representation in both bone accumulations, compare bone assemblages characteristics of the two hyenas, and we did our study in Samburu and Magadi, and compare species representation in wildlife protected areas and unprotected areas. Document service bone modification patterns of the two species. Our study was first in Samburu and Magadi. And from those areas, we analyzed 50 dens, 17 of which were from Magadi, that is the Shombole area, and then 33 in Samburu. What did we get? Out of the 50 dens, only 42 had bones. Probably, if Kay will not address that, in most cases, dens of spotted hyenas sometimes don't have bones, and probably that's why. And again, depending on the length of use of a den site, bones sometimes don't accumulate. And that's why we have only 42 that had bones, and the number of bones in each were different. But in this case, we analyzed about 10,000 bones, of which we could identify with to a high level, 6,656. When we compared the two study areas, the species representation was almost similar, but below we'll see some differences. And in this case, we identified 72 species. And 71 species, sorry. And when we compare the two areas, in Magadi, we identified more species that were 56. And then in Samburu, we had 52. In both areas, when you compare the representation of carnivores and herbivores, in both areas, it was similar. It was similar. So there's only some minor differences that I'll illustrate below. When comparing livestock representation in the two study areas, we find that Samburu had more livestock represented in dens compared to Magadi. As you can see, only up to 50% of the dens of Magadi had livestock, while in Samburu, all the dens had livestock. You can see there were livestock that had 100% livestock, while in Magadi, it's only some had up to 50%. And then when you compare also livestock representation and wildlife representation in protected and unprotected areas, you will see also that In Samburu, we found livestock represented in a high percentage of livestock represented in the protected areas compared to Magadi, where we had also very few livestock represented, just implying that probably as much as livestock were found in the Magadi, it appears wildlife protection is higher compared to, I mean, they are strict in protecting livestock entry into the protected areas as compared to the Samburu area. And from this study, we concluded that both hyena species accumulate livestock in relatively high proportions. But Samburu, where the spotted hyena dens were, had more livestock than wildlife. Then the striped hyena of Magadi collected more wildlife than livestock. And when you look at the species representation, it was feeding mostly on the grand gazelles. And these are generally accumulated compared to the larger ungulates. Samburu hyenas accumulated more livestock because probably the wildlife there is more depleted compared to Shombole, that is in Magadi. Overall, the frequency of occurrence of livestock in dens was high in both study areas, but differed in the number of specimens represented. And because I just wanted to be brief on this representation, and I will end up my representation there, and then we'll talk after we can allow questions after Kay has stopped.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Ogeto. We could allow Professor Kay to also share her presentation now before we can start taking questions.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I'm very happy to have you all here learning about hyenas, and thanks very much to Ogeto for a very interesting presentation. Ogeto had asked me to actually address some of the myths that exist about spotted hyenas in particular, and so I thought I would do that. But as you may know, most people don't like hyenas, and they are a real public relations challenge for those of us who actually study them. Most people actually think of them as awful, skulking carrion eaters that look much like these hyenas portrayed in Walt Disney's movie, The Lion King. But that is actually not really what they're like. It's understandable that people here in Africa dislike hyenas sometimes, given that sometimes hyenas actually kill their livestock. As you've seen, livestock bones certainly show up at hyena dens, as Ogeto has just shown you. But the conservation of spotted hyenas in particular is made very difficult by the persistence of a lot of false beliefs about hyenas. And so I want to try to address some of those today to explain what the truth of the matter is. Surprisingly, more and more people are coming to find hyenas to be very interesting because they have learned some things about them, and they're unusually interesting animals, as I'll show you. Here, for example, one of my students was actually giving a lecture about hyenas to the Wageni at a lodge in the Mara, and I was sort of stunned to see how many people turned out for this, actually very curious about hyenas. And as Ogeto has shown you, we have these 4 species of hyenas here in Africa, and their diets are quite radically different, really. The aardwolf eats nothing but termites. These 2 species, the striped and brown hyena, actually feed mainly on carrion. They do very little killing, although they will make opportunistic grabs at prey, as the artist is showing you here. But spotted hyenas are the only ones that are actually living in big groups and hunting wild herbivore prey. And I'll come back to that. So these are some of the myths that I want to briefly address today. A lot of people believe that hyenas are closely related to dogs. They do look sort of dog-like. Most people believe that hyenas live alone, that they're solitary animals, that hyenas steal food from lions and therefore harm the lions, that hyenas are strict scavengers, that they can't hunt effectively. Some people believe that hyena body parts have medicinal value. And finally, a lot of people have historically believed that hyenas are hermaphrodites. And so I want to show you what the truth is in relation to each of these myths. Okay, with respect to the myth that hyenas are closely related to dogs, you can actually see, based on this evolutionary tree, we're showing you the entire mammalian order Carnivora. And here's the feliforms, the cat-like carnivores, and here's the caniforms, the dog-like carnivores. And so here are dogs, and here are cats, and here are hyenas. So they're actually much more closely related to cats than they are to dogs. And in fact, their closest living relatives are mongooses and the fossa in Madagascar. A lot of people seem to think that hyenas live alone. And it's certainly true that if you go on safari, you do see hyenas alone like this one. But in fact, they actually live in large stable social groups called clans. And all the members of a clan know one another individually, and together they defend a group territory, and they rear all their cubs together at a communal den. And we know this because we've been studying spotted hyenas in the Mara since 1988. This is a great place to study them because it's an open habitat where you can really see them. And the clans in the Mara contain anywhere between 40 and 120 hyenas. And they actually have very rich family life within their clans. Hyenas the females are wonderful mothers. They're very good about protecting their offspring, and they take care of their kids much longer than any other carnivore, except a couple of bears in North America. And the cubs are left alone at a communal den until they're about a year old. And here's one from Amboseli. Very fun to go watch them there because the cubs spend a lot of time playing and engaging with those bones that Ogeto found at the dens. But hyenas actually are very smart, and they actually form coalitions with their clanmates to accomplish particular goals. And in the top picture I'm showing you here, for example, this lioness had come to the den, and she was sticking her paw down in the den trying to fish out some cubs. And so the hyena mothers joined forces to get this lioness to go away. And in the lower picture, you can actually see that a whole group of hyenas are on a border patrol. They're patrolling the edge of their territory boundary, and they do this quite regularly in large groups. Another myth is that spotted hyenas are strictly scavengers, that they live on material like I'm showing you here pretty strictly, but that is in fact not true. The fact is that spotted hyenas did descend within the last 1 million years from a scavenging ancestor, an ancestor who, like brown and striped hyenas today, feeds mainly on carrion. But in fact, spotted hyenas are great hunters, as I'll show you in a minute. What you might want to see, though, is this fantastic skull, which it looks very much like the skulls of brown and striped hyenas, all of which are heavily adapted for bone cracking. And because this hyena, the spotted hyena's last ancestor, was a carrion feeder, it maintained all these adaptations. So you can see this big, robust skull with very few teeth that are very, very coated with a very, very robust enamel. And they can put a big bone between this tooth and the one on the lower jaw that opposes it and crack open bones that are 7 centimeters in diameter. It's really quite extraordinary. So you'll see the skull is got all these bony protuberances and ridges, and those are all there specifically as attachment sites for the 2 main jaw closing muscles, which are of course the temporalis and the masseter, as they are in all of us. And that capability allows spotted hyenas to take advantage of a lot of different kinds of food source. So here an elephant has keeled over dead, and this hyena is able to open the carcass with those formidable jaws. And this little hyena can't make much headway with a bone this size, but an adult hyena can crack something that open pretty straightforwardly to consume the marrow within when prey are scarce. But in fact, spotted hyenas are actually excellent hunters. They are no less efficient hunters than lions or cheetahs or wolves in North America. And in the Mara, 95% of the hyena's diet is actually composed of prey they kill themselves. And this is the menu from which the hyenas in the Mara choose on a daily basis. They typically go after all of these different prey species. And they often join forces to hunt with their clanmates in groups of particularly difficult prey like zebra or buffalo, because those are hard to bring down by a single hyena. But here you see a pair of hyenas chasing after a mother wildebeest and her calf. But the vast majority of hunts are undertaken by lone hyenas. And the sort of amazing thing to me is that the hyena here is weighing about 60 kilos. The prey is weighing 3 times that much. And yet a lone hyena can pretty straightforwardly bring down an antelope that size. And we see this very often in the Mara. And the fact is that it takes less than 20 minutes for a group of hungry hyenas feeding to reduce a topi from a living, running, breathing creature that weighs about the same 180 kilos roughly as a wildebeest. It reduces this animal to this in 20 minutes. It's really quite extraordinary. And I think that's one of the reasons why spotted hyenas have a bad reputation, because they eat very quickly, and people find it hard to believe how quickly they eat, actually. But this runs into the myth that spotted hyenas steal food from lions. And I think this myth derives from the fact that all of us are smart enough to know that the African bush is a very dangerous place to wander around at night, because there are a lot of predators out there. So we all lock ourselves into our tents or our villages and come out at dawn. And you often come across a scene that looks like this one, where you see a big, handsome male lion feeding on this carcass and these hyenas hanging around in the background. But if you're the hyena biologist and you get up at 4:30 in the morning and go out and watch them, you actually see what really happens, which is here the hyenas have actually just killed a topi on a rainy day morning in the rainy season. And they feed on it for about 7 or 8 minutes. And then up trots this guy and steals the remains of the carcass from them. And the fact is that lions do steal food from hyenas more frequently than the other way around. So, in the top picture, I'm showing you a scene where the lion's actually maintaining control and the hyenas are all just hanging around hoping to get something. And down here, though, the hyenas have actually managed to get 2 subadult male lions off of this giraffe. The hyenas killed it, lion stole it, then the hyenas got it back by calling in their clanmates to come help them. In fact, lions are very, very dangerous for spotted hyenas to tangle with. They represent the main source of mortality for hyenas historically. They don't eat them, by the way, they just kill them and walk away. And here's another myth that I think we need to address, which is it came from one of your presidential candidates who suggested that Kenyans might be able to get rich selling hyena testicles to people in foreign countries. And unfortunately, as great as it would be for Kenyans to get rich doing something like that, this plan has a lot of problems. And I want to tell you about 3 of them in particular. The plan wrongly assumes that hyena testicles actually have some medicinal value, but in fact, they don't. They don't have any more medicinal value than human testicles or raccoon testicles or any other kind of testicles. That's just a myth. Second, it wrongly assumes that hyenas are useless. But in fact, I'm going to show you they perform some really important ecosystem services, not only here in Kenya, but elsewhere in Africa. I want to give you an example from Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, in the northern cities of Ethiopia, hyenas are viewed as good because the people believe that they eat evil spirits. And so they allow the hyenas to persist in their cities, and the hyenas feed in their trash dumps, and they remove hundreds of tons of animal carcass waste from these cities each year. And their scavenging behavior annually prevents thousands of infections of anthrax and tuberculosis in both humans and livestock. You see, hyenas have a really remarkable immune system, and they actually can eat creatures that have been infected with anthrax and not die. That was something that would probably kill any of us. And finally, their disease control service saves US millions and millions of dollars in treatment costs for humans and livestock, and losses avoided of those livestock. And that was a study that was just done by Sanawana et al. Last year. Very impressive. And then the third problem with the Wakajoya plan is that it wrongly assumes that it's easy to distinguish male from female hyenas, which in fact it's not. Most mammals actually, it's very easy to distinguish. Males are larger and stronger and look different than females, as you see in the picture on the left with these lions. But I have to show you this X-rated photo so that you have some idea which is the male and which is the female among spotted hyenas. They are really remarkably similar in appearance. Males are slightly smaller, about 10% smaller than females, but otherwise they are really similar. And in fact, if you saw these animals in nature, you would probably assume that they were males, but in fact, both of them are females. And so if you captured this hyena on the right here in particular to harvest its testicles and sell it, you would be, the buyer would be sadly disappointed because there actually are no testicles in there. It's just fat and connective tissue. And this is the female's elongated clitoris through which she urinates, copulates, and gives birth. It's quite an extraordinary organ. Nobody understands yet why they have it, but it's really hard to tell males from females unless you are an expert. Internally, spotted hyenas look like essentially every other mammalian carnivore, except that the vaginal canal, instead of exiting the body under the tail, as would happen in a dog or a cat, it makes a hairpin turn and exits the body through that elongated clitoris. And so all of these myths that we just mentioned are false. And I hope that you know that this vision of spotted hyenas is wrong, but there are alternative visions that I actually hope you'll go on safari and see for yourselves. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Professor K, for ending it on such a high note. I think those are very enlightening remarks and observations from a scientist who has studied hyenas for 34 years, you said.
It's a long time.
Yeah, it's actually longer than 34 years. It's really remarkable. So thank you very much for those two presentations by Ogeto and Kay. We are now going to open for discussions. If you have a question or you have a comment, you can post it in the chat, or you can raise your hand, and then I'm going to see it. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to probably air your question or voice your question. However, there are a few questions on the chat that I'll probably start with, and then we can proceed from there. We have about 15 minutes to do Q&A. Gideon Nyamase is asking, I believe we should go to Dr. Ogeto. Is it possible that a hyena family could be using more than one den? And did you find ectoparasites such as fleas in the dens? Dr. Ogeto. You're muted, Doc. We can't hear you.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
You can hear me, okay. Yeah. So what I was saying is that, yes, hyenas can use dens, several dens, because they use them as maternity dens. You might find that in some cases we have observed a hyena using a den for 3 days and then moving the cubs to a den. So they use more than one den at a time.
So did you find ectoparasites such as fleas in the dens?
Oh yes. I remember. Because of time, I couldn't even show you where I've entered dens, and when coming out, there are so many on my body that people have to remove. We have ticks and other ectoparasites that come onto your body and then you come out, and they are there.
Okay. And what about any others? Any other ectoparasites apart from fleas, maybe, that you could shed light about?
Yeah, they are the main ones that I can identify myself are ticks. But I don't know which other ones that might be there, but they should be there.
Okay. Thank you. Paul Kagame, I'm seeing your hand is raised. You could go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question for K. Holekamp. I hope you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I had a question for K. Holekamp on the myth when it comes to hyena. I read somewhere that when it comes to hierarchy, the male hyena is usually at the bottom of the hierarchy, and that they have a quite matriarchal system. Is it true, or is just specific to some group of hyena? Thank you.
No, that's a good question. I'm sorry, I felt I didn't have time to address that here, but yes, they do live in a matriarchal society in which female spotted hyenas are socially dominant to males, and the males are all very, very submissive to females, and the male may go kill a wildebeest or whatever, and if a female sees him do it and she comes to the scene, she can displace him from the food and take all of it if she wants it, or share it with her relatives, but the male tends to be the last one to get to feed, even if he's killed the food. So you do not want to be a male hyena.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
I think that last remark has a lot to do with our society, where we associate hyena with some tendencies or some behaviors.
Yeah, I think we'll have to shift it now to the other side.
That has to shift now. It's not good to be a hyena, a male hyena. Thank you. I think, Dr. Ogeto, there's a question for you. How do you put the findings that you presented into use, especially in the conservation of hyenas? Are hyenas an endangered species? And if so, what endangers them? Dr. Ogeto, unmute kindly.
Yes, especially the striped hyena. Despite being no unknown, I mean, this race started because of its behavior, as well as people it's a bit quiet and people take less attention to it. But generally, these animals, like any other carnivores, are endangered because people poison them. They are killed because people believe they are taking more their livestock, or also the meats that are used against them. People don't like them. Wherever they see them, they want to kill them. But officially, they don't. They are not recognized as important species.
What about among the other carnivores? Are they preyed upon? Sorry, Dr. Ogeto, we lost your voice.
Oh, whether?
I mean, we had lost your audio at some point.
Yes.
I don't know whether you had finished.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Okay, and there's a question that you posed, which?
Yes, I was following up with a question on what about, apart from humans who maybe kill them, etc. Among the animal, are there other carnivores? Are there carnivores that maybe prey on hyenas, or how is the relationship with other animals? Are they endangered probably by other animals?
I think, yeah, it is. Sometimes the lions kill them because of that competition. That's the main cause of death of lions. And I think Kay may illustrate more than myself, because he has been observing and he knows those interactions between lions and hyenas that also kill. In most cases, hyenas are killed.
Yes, that's correct. Most interactions between hyenas and lions result in deaths of hyenas, but not lions. And as I mentioned, the lions just kill them and then walk away. They don't eat them. They just remove the competition, as you said.
Okay, thank you. Winifred Kiru is saying it would be interesting to see how hyenas feature in the human wildlife conflict database maintained by KWS. Do you have any information on the reports made by pastoralists in the areas that you have studied? I think any of you could take it.
Ogeto, shall I answer?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, can you answer?
Okay, yeah, we've actually studied that here among the pastoralist villages that live that are situated along the northern edge of the Masai Mara, And so we studied this for 4 years, and we hired a number of game scouts to actually visit all these manadas and report any kind of conflict that occurred between any carnivore and the livestock or people that live there. And what we found was that the livestock were targeted by leopards, lions, and hyenas. And hyenas were mostly going into bomas and eating sheep, killing sheep and goats, whereas the lions were mainly killing cows outside of the bomas. And the leopards were also, like hyenas, stealing sheep and goats from inside the bomas. And then in recent years, there have been more and more predator-proof bomas built in this area, and it's very straightforward to keep hyenas from killing livestock if you can put up such a boma. They're really very effective.
Okay, thank you. Winifred, your hand is up. I don't know whether was it about the same question that I've posed?
No, I was actually, can I proceed? Yes. Yeah. I was actually wondering, I'm sorry I joined late, and so I might have this wrong, but what I understood is that Dr. Ogeto was comparing the presence of livestock carcasses in hyena dens within the Samburu National Reserve and the Shompole area in Magadi. And I just wondered, those two, I wouldn't consider the Shompole a protected area. I was just wondering if your results would have been different if you focused on a strictly protected area like Nairobi National Park, and then you compared it to Samburu, which is a national reserve, which is essentially a protected area with a lot of livestock incursion. Do you think that the selection of livestock is opportunistic, or is it preferential? Because if livestock is just showing up, livestock is easy to grab. It's actually domesticated. But then if a hyena was in Nairobi National Park and didn't have that much access to livestock, do you think your results would be different?
First of all, what I want to make clear is that in Shombole, where my study was based, it is a community area. And then there is a community conservancy, like is the Samburu National Reserve. So these two areas, in terms of livestock movement and the control, is almost the same. That's why I compared the two. I can't compare Nairobi National Park with Shombole because that's a fully protected area, is not community protected. So as to opportunistic livestock attacks, yes, because when they are available, they can be attacked opportunistically. But what I found out between the Shombole and Samburu, probably there are more wildlife down in Shombole than they are in Samburu. And in Shombole, because the livestock actually enter the conservancy when it's extremely very dry, and probably that's when they are eaten. But it appears in Samburu, livestock enter the reserve anytime, and that's why probably there are more. That's my thinking.
Well, my view is that if you're looking, the purpose of your study is to look at dietary preferences, then you need to compare two areas with different, availability of those dietary components that you're looking for. So if you're going to look at Shompole and Samburu, where there's probably the same likelihood to encounter livestock, then you're not really controlling for availability or opportunistic predation. So essentially, how would you be able to know whether if hyena were in a place where they cannot actually access livestock, they would as well feed on wildlife? the representation of wildlife in your sample or livestock in your sample could purely be explained as opportunistic availability of livestock.
Okay,
As
probably.
opposed to preference of dietary preferences.
I mean, when you look, I've again compared. I did compare livestock representation, living livestock, and then the dead in the dens. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, in Sombole, I didn't show that slide. The pattern was the same, and it is still suggesting that the wildlife down in Sombole is more, because even the species that were identified were more than what was identified in Samburu. And I strongly believe that because of those slower representation of livestock, wildlife in Samburu, that's why they were appearing less in dens than you compared with Shombole. But again, that's suggestion that one should look at strictly protected areas and then compare with livestock areas. Then that is another thing that should be looked at in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Ogeto. Maybe Kay, you have a comment on that?
No, I think I agree with Ogeto that the work he does is very painstaking and takes forever to identify which bones came from where, and especially when you only have bone fragments to work with. So I personally view it as a heroic effort to look at both Shombole and Samburu, and I think that's right. Maybe other students in the future will be able to do a larger scale study where they can actually compare places like Nakuru or Nairobi National Park, where yes, there's very little livestock intrusion.
Okay. Thank you very much. Dr. Ogeto, when you're making your presentation and you're identifying hairs from the gut, I think. I saw from the scuts, I saw human hair being one of the hairs identified. And I remember recently in our locality, we had cases where we had hyenas attacking humans. So is this typical? Is it typical to have hyenas attacking?
Actually, that happens.
Humans and actually sometimes just preying on humans. The typical was it what would have cost humans, and actually sometimes the typical was it what would go ahead.
Yes. What I'm saying that they occasionally attack people. And in some of the hyena dens, we are finding skeletons of humans, but I wouldn't say that they were being attacked by people, and probably they were being scavenged, depending on the area. That some areas actually people don't bury their kin, and they can go and scavenge on the carcasses. But there is occasional human attack, but it's not a very frequent thing.
I agree. I've actually been following this for a long time, and the Maasai here where we work in the Mara are historically left their dead out in the bush to be consumed by hyenas. So yes, it's very likely that in many cases that wasn't a hyena attacking a person, but those attacks do sometimes happen, particularly in areas where the natural wildlife has been decimated.
Okay, so it was a case of probably lack of enough prey to hunt on, and so because you realize some of the, especially the recent reported cases are in areas where there's a lot of human encroachment and people have built homes, etc., etc. So you find hyenas attacking humans at night as they go home. But it's good to know that this is not typical unless really there's something that has pushed them. Either there's a reduction of prey or maybe dead corpses.
That's true. Having said that, I would encourage everyone not to sleep unprotected in the bush also, because they are opportunistic and they will take advantage of you if you're just lying there.
Okay, beautiful. I think there's a question by Miriam Kasamani who's asking what is the length of the gestation period?
That is 110 days.
110 days.
Yeah,
Okay.
so about two and a half months roughly.
All right.
And then they nurse their babies for over a year and protect them well into adulthood. It's quite extraordinary. They're really good mothers.
Oh, great. Thank you. I think we want to come to end it here, ladies and gentlemen. Our time is up. We really want to say thank you very much for the two experts. And we've learned some new things. That what has surprised me most is that actually most of the time it's the lions who steal prey from hyenas.
That's rude. That's a lot of people to learn that.
Yeah, actually, I'm very surprised that is actually what happens. So the videos we see is actually the hyenas trying to get back their prey from the lion.
Often it is. Yes, come visit us in the Mara. You can see it for yourself.
Great. Thank you very much. I think we want to stop it there, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you very much, Dr. Ogeto. Thank you very much, Professor K. We really appreciate the work you're doing and demystifying some of the myths that have come across. But are you really saying that nobody is buying hyenas body part?
I think if they're buying them, they're wasting their money. It just isn't going to do them any good.
So it's really neither here nor there. So thank you very much. But are there people who eat hyenas? Humans? Are there humans who eat hyenas?
I've never heard of any. Ogeto, have you?
No.
Okay. Good. Then I guess we stop it here, ladies and gentlemen. We really want to appreciate all of you for joining us. I think we want to. I think I'd seen the DVC Professor Kwanza join us, but I think he has left. Deputy Vice Chancellor Research at JKUR, but he has left probably to join another meeting. But really, thank you very much. We want to stop it here. We want to appreciate everybody who has contributed to the success of this. Dr. Ogeto and the National Museums of Kenya, thank you very much. Dr. Gladys Onyambo from Zoology Department. We hope there's really a lot you can do with these experts to build our wildlife conservation program at JKU Arts. And please, Dr. Ogeto and Professor K, feel free to visit us. Probably even, maybe you could give a lecture or two to our students and build areas of collaboration, because I believe this is an area that is highly, probably, as much as you've studied them for many years, there's still a lot that needs to be studied.
Indeed.
Yeah, so maybe your final words, Professor Ogeto, 10 seconds.
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me to this. And I'll just tell whoever who has a question, can contact me, we can discuss, and whatever that you did not get, I can answer questions that I can. And then if not, I'll contact my mentor, Kay, to answer the questions.
Thank you very much. Maybe you could post your email address on the chat function. Anybody who needs to make maybe a follow-up or question or even on collaboration, they can do that. Professor K,
okay, I'll do that.
Okay, I've just posted my email address for anybody who has questions. And there was one final one where a person asked, has anyone done research on medicinal value of hyena tissues? And yes, the answer is yes. And there's absolutely nothing extraordinary about them, but there is something extraordinary about their immune system. So if we could understand how it is that hyenas can manage to consume bacteria like anthrax and yet not even experience indigestion, much less die, I think it would be a great boon for humanity if we could figure that out.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that's a good point to end on. So thank you very much, my colleagues from JKU Art Research Directorate, Dr. Rebecca, Dr. Kahangi, Dr. Bilio, and Dr. Carol Mugodo, and others who have joined us. Thank you very much. We end it here. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.